Well, I have been so out of the submitting game. I haven't really been doing a lot, mainly because we're in the busy season at work and everything sucks. And but I really had some great pieces. Well, to me, I was like, hey, I'm really doing some stuff that I really like. I appreciate. I'm being honest. I think it's working out very well. And so I've tried submitting, and it's I forget how hot and cold it can all run, and you can never really predict what's going on because I felt like so strong at the beginning of the year. I got some really, really great acceptances from some really great publications like Jake and Roy Fagnan, if that's how you say that. And then nothing, and a couple things happened in my personal life and all that stuff like that. But boy, I tell you what, I submitted something and I'm like, this is strong. I'm very happy with this piece. I really like how it came out. Very strong. I submitted it at like 9:30 a.m. to a really great lit mag. And I think that whoever makes those choices at that lit mag must have just been sitting by their computer, heard the ding, opened it up, read it in the 2 minutes that it takes to read 326 stories, and said, oh, absolutely not. So it was like the quickest turnaround for a submission for a rejection that I had ever received. And it just
Wow.
felt so much like, well, not a no so much as a, oh, heavens no. So
Yeah, it's not a no.
always
It's not no. It's next.
next, oh, please.
Right.
Oh my
You
gosh.
never know what's going to
And
hit.
then,
Like for real, look.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Because they could open it up and read the
yeah,
first 20 words and go, yeah, no, this isn't going to fit.
right.
Yeah.
And I know that we've talked before about the balance in like, sometimes there's a submission call and it's like, oh my gosh, the slip mag is open for another 3 days. I didn't know about it. Let me try and put something together. But then there's that also theory, the theory that's like, no, wait until your piece is finished, and then find out who's open, or hold the piece until you want to get it somewhere. Make the piece right. So it's that sort of throwing everything against the wall or taking a chance with something that it might not be finished, or do you just pine over it and pine over it and pine over it? And I am definitely a mess of both of those camps. I'll work something to death, but then turning around, I'll have another piece that I'm like, oh yeah, this is just the second draft. I'm sure this will make it into the lit mag that has a 0.003 acceptance rate. So yeah, it's been a
Yeah.
very humbling experience the past couple of weeks in getting some rejections.
Yeah. I don't want to both sides the thing, but it's a little bit of both, unfortunately. And it's about
Yeah.
balance. And like, I hate to say that because it sounds so cliche, but if you're the kind of person who writes something, like I've been this person. So I write something, I'm in the pocket, I'm feeling really good about what I wrote. I think it's fantastic. You don't want to just throw that out into the world without having given it, a chance to kind of sit or rest. And we've talked about that before. So I think there is value in not immediately sending things out without having at least a draft or two into it. But I had that experience where there was that short-term deadline and I was trying to basically whip something up in a day. And I ended up doing a 2,200 word story in a day with a revision. Like it was all hands on deck. That's what
Wow.
I did that day. And I was so thrilled with the first draft of it. And I sent it to you, if you remember. And then you read it and you're
Yes.
like, this is mostly there. And then these are the things that I would focus on. And I'm like, oh, interesting. So then I went back to the piece again, same day I drafted it, maybe a few hours after I had sort of put it aside. Went back with those colored glasses on that you had given me and said, oh yeah, he's right. Let me make this change and this change. And so I kind of made the changes and then poof, it went out the door. I think I even sent you the revision, but
Yes, because I think you did, because I remember the next day I saw the text or something. And I was like, are you kidding me? I'm like 50 now. I'm asleep by that time. Either that or already crashed into an episode of Grand Designs on YouTube. But yeah, I remember that day. And it feels good, right? You're like, this is strong. I've done a very good thing. This is great.
it is. And there's the danger because I was walking the dog the next day and thought, wow, I really missed the mark on the ending. And it's not that it's a bad ending, but it's that it doesn't carry the emotional weight that it should. And it just, spoiler alert, it's semi autobiographical. But,
Hmm.
there's definitely some strong influence from experiences that I've had, which is great because I used to write from none of that. And so now it's like, oh, the work is better. Who knew?
Yeah,
Everyone,
yeah,
Art,
yeah,
everyone. So anyway, I was looking at the character of the son because it's me and my son, but it's a fictional me and a fictional version of him. And I'm like, God, if I don't include some detail about why he loves this kid, you could read this thing and go, man, he hates his son. Like I didn't
yeah,
include any of that. And it's not, it's,
yeah,
it's a very highly charged situation is the thing. It's the aftermath of a hurricane and he's trying to keep things even keel for a kid on the spectrum. And so, I needed that distance. I needed a day or two to go, all right, well, you steered uh, out of the curve and you parked. So there's no conflict there at the end. And you may have put your thumb too hard on this one aspect of their relationship. So, like, go
yeah,
fix it. So, I mean, how many times do I need to go back into that? How much actual time on the calendar do I need to get it to where it's done? I don't know. I think it's different for every writer. And frankly, it's probably different for every piece. Some of them spill out and some of them
yeah,
bleed out. But whatever that is, I think everybody can come up with that. We'll just call it doneness. It's almost like when you cook steak. Some
yeah,
people like it medium rare, some people like it well done, but you know what doneness looks like for your steak. Let's just put that on your story. You know what done looks like to where if you put your name on it and shoved it out into the world, you would not be embarrassed to have your name on it. And maybe, just maybe, you would be super happy to have your name on it. When it's there, that's when you send it out and not a minute earlier,
yeah,
and really not a minute
yeah,
later because it does no good sitting in your drawer or your file folder on your computer. It does nobody any good if it's just sitting there. So, like, get it out there. But at the same time, it's nice to have a bullpen of stories that you can
yeah.
circulate and get out into the world. So yeah, it's a little of both. I think it's like maybe I'm just hungry, but maybe it's the doneness theory.
Yeah, I love the times, and I think it might happen maybe once or twice a year. And I might need to define those parameters a little bit more. When I write a piece and I go, okay, that's exactly the wording that I want to have. And I write like a ton of little pieces. I try to start, whenever I'm feeling down or whenever I feel like I don't have a lot of time or whenever I feel that actually, to be a little bit more explicit, whenever I feel like I have too much work going on, the bill paying work, that I don't have the time to sit back and reflect on a piece that I've written, I write other different little pieces, seeing if I can land on something that I'm like, hey, that's something that I could follow. And that comes from, here we go again with the improv training. A lot of times if you want to start a scene with a scene partner, you just gossip. You just kind of like have little small talk until something happens between the two of you that one of you can have an emotional reaction to. So I do that a lot with myself in just writing little pieces when I'm on the subway or when I'm sort of waiting for, when I'm on break or something like that, to try and find a piece that I'm like, wait a minute, I have an emotional connection to that. I can do that. So every now and then, maybe like once or twice a year, I write a piece that I'm like, that's it. Like it's done. In connecting to that doneness is something that you really got to try and listen out for yourself. And it's about you. Yeah, it's about you. If you're the person, then you're like, this is the writing that I like to do. This is how I want to represent myself. That's what you've got to search for. I think a lot of times, you've submitted stuff on Submittable, correct, Art?
Yes, I have.
Yes. And we talked about that. Well, I talked about it in one of the refills as far as being one of the places that you can submit your work to. One of the traps that I fall into right now, I think I have maybe like 6 or 7 things on Submittable right now, and they're all in progress. And it's like, you get the cold sweats because you're like, oh, they're all in progress. That's going to be another 8 rejections, or maybe by some miracle, I'll get the acceptance from one of these. If I send it to one lit mag and that lit mag rejects it, I instantly take it back to the tool shop and start working on it. And I'd like to get myself to a place where I'm confident enough to say, no, okay, this wasn't for them. I'm going to try the next lit mag. I'm going to try the next one, then the next one, and the next one, and the next one, until it finds the lit mag that, it resonates with, that says, yeah, oh, okay, I get what this guy's trying to say. Because a lot of times I think I overwork pieces just because I've gotten one or two rejections from, from lit mags. So yeah, trying to get a piece that's in a really good place that feels like it sings in your voice is kind of a rare thing, but it's a fun thing when you really latch into it.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. The overworking of a piece, that's something you've talked about before, where you have the initial sort of blast of creativity, and your partner reads it and says she likes it, and then you kind of work on it for a couple of weeks, and she's like, "You
Yeah.
ruined it," you know. And
Yep,
it's
yep,
like
yep.
if we're decorating cakes, and I just keep putting stuff on the cake, and I just can't stop. Like, oh, we need glitter, we need sprinkles, we need plastic dolls, we need glowworms, like we need everything on the cake. And unless you're a
Yeah.
5-year-old at their birthday, nobody's gonna like that cake. So
No.
yeah. Even
No,
accessories, right? I've
no,
heard
no.
women when they get ready, like my wife has told me this. It's like take off one accessory before you leave. 'Cause they just
Oh
yeah,
yeah, I've
yeah,
heard that too.
yeah. So I mean,
Yeah.
I think it translates to many areas as far as writing goes. I don't want to be so deliberate in my symbolism, for example, that it becomes puzzly, which is the mistake I was making 25 years ago. And I thought that was a good thing, and I was actually trying to do that. So it makes it doubly worse because I'm dumb and making the mistake. But now at least I can
Yeah.
recognize, hey, not the best. Maybe don't do that. But that's what I'm concerned about. So this story that I was telling you about earlier, I see a clear vision for what it could be, but I don't want to go too far with it and make it so on the rails that it's predictable or boring or sentimental in a way that's very
Yeah.
unsatisfying. But like the thing that I think is missing is it's called aftermath, and so something needs to happen, and really nothing does. Like he tries to stave off a meltdown essentially from a kid on the
Hmm.
spectrum who's encountering a situation or a circumstance of being in the eye of a hurricane without power. And it's like, okay, that's a potentially very stressful situation. But the person in the story, the dad in the story, handles it all expertly, and nothing really breaks. So it's like,
Hmm.
okay. And so if I look at the historical story that this is based on, this moment from my life, that's what happened. I spun all the plates, and they stayed spinning. And I avoided the meltdown, and it was a great day. And I actually look at that as a triumph of parenting. But is that good for the fiction? I'm thinking no. But I
Right.
also don't want to go maudlin or morose or so stupid on the other side of things that this epic blow up occurs and whatnot. So I think I have a happy middle ground. I think I know what's going to happen, where it's really not the kid who's having the problem. It's the narrator. It's the parent who's
Yeah.
having the problem, and it's the
Yeah.
parent who's about to boil over for a variety of reasons. And the thing that's going to diffuse him, I hope I'm not giving anything away. Like, nobody's going to read the story, Tim. It's not going to be published.
You
So,
don't, no, it will. It
whatever.
will. It's a great story.
All
It's a
right.
great story.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Then you heard it here first, folks. But yeah, if this thing ever
Yeah.
sees the light of day, then you did literally hear it here first. But the thing that's
Yes.
going to kind of diffuse the potential meltdown that he is experiencing, because it's not the kid at all, it's him, trying to keep the plate spinning, is his son is going to be watching a movie on the phone, which is the only thing that works, right? You have a house with no power, and he was lucky enough to have 2/3 of his battery on his phone, and he's like, here, watch a movie. So there's a whole kind of setup for that. But the light from the phone lights up the son's face in the darkness. And the son kind of gives a half smile, is what I'm thinking. Like just
Yeah.
enough to see that he's okay. And then once the
Yeah.
dad sees that he's okay, then it all just melts away. So I'm really
Yeah.
excited to do that because I'm hoping to get some emotionality there. Like that should tug a little bit, but not in a sappy way or a melancholy way, or
Yeah.
just like, hey, it's gonna be all right. Basically that kind of sensibility. So I'm hopeful.
Yeah, I mean, I think we actually talked about this when you and I had a phone conversation about this piece on that long day that you had spent writing it, where it doesn't have to all be true because you find yourself in that weird spot. I've tried to get a little bit more into writing about my experiences and my perspective instead of just like space and lasers and about how much I hate my job. It's just like I was trying so hard to make the piece truthful about myself as a way of a little bit of therapy for myself that came free, but B, to make a good story. Like I'm working my stuff out and it's a good story and this is good stuff. But then I continually have to remember you can make up a couple fibs, you can change a couple things around to make it work as a piece of fiction. Have you've sort of tuned into that? We talked a little bit about that. Have you thought about trying to sort of step out of the sort of nonfiction part of it to give it a little bit more of a fiction vibe to make it into a better story in the way that you want to present?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I actually like the way that you're framing that. It made me think of this analogy that I hope is useful. Fiction frames reality the same way that architecture frames housing. We grew up 10,000 years ago living in natural rock formations or, living in nature without being able to shape it to meet our needs. And when we discovered fire and then discovered how to, hew stone and cut down trees and build with these resources, then we were able to fashion a world that we wanted to live in rather than live in the
Hmm.
world that we were given. And I think
Yeah.
fiction is very much the same way. I'm using my real life as the resources from which I can build the world that I want to inhabit and showcase
Yeah.
to other people.
On the one hand, it's like, in this, I'm going to just make up an example. Like in this story, am I talking about an ex partner that I had? Yes, I am. Do I need to change the names to protect the innocent? Of course I do. But also, there's the structures of fiction, there's the way that it gets presented. And that's why the embellishments have to happen. And sometimes I lose sight of that because I'm just like, no, man, I really need to work it out, man. Instead of like, how would you like to try writing a nice story instead? And so, yeah, it's nice. I'm sorry, man. You were talking about living in caves, and all I could think of was like Fred Flintstone, with a pterodactyl just sort of like writing things out. Anyway, yeah, yeah. That's probably more my sort of architectural style, which is completely
Uh,
foolish.
well,
But
I've
but
often
yeah.
look.
Oh,
I've often said that my favorite human-made thing is a perfectly mowed piece of grass that's surrounded by a concrete sidewalk. Because it is nature is tamed and everything's okay.
yes.
There was such a fallacy back in the late 1800s. I guess it was the Gilded Age. There was this prevailing point of view: mankind could tame nature, and that mankind
Yeah.
was
Oh,
able
yeah.
to. Yeah, and you get Titanic and you get all these wonderful failures out of this hubris. So
Yeah.
I think to kind of apply that to fiction. Maybe 25 years ago, I was in my own little Gilded Age thought bubble where I said, "Oh, I can do whatever I want and make it a puzzle and people will like it." And that turned out not to be true. And now I'm like, okay, well, I understand people more, and I don't pretend to know what they want. I don't know what
Yes.
people want to read.
Right.
So I all I
Yeah.
can know is what I want to write. So I'll just go do that. And if I happen to
Yeah.
have an accident of expressing something that people latch onto, super. That's great.
Yeah.
But I can't
Yeah.
control anything else. So I think the lack of
No.
hubris for me is helping.
Yeah, I mean, I was the same way. I was just like, I mean, the college Tim as a writer was so, and you have to be, I guess. There has to be a part of you that has the history of being like, I'm going to be the next great writer. I'm going to last through time and my books will be revered. And then, of course, life happens and you realize you aren't, or you're Cormac McCarthy and you are. But yeah, I think, that hubris of when I was in my 20s and I just graduated from college and being like, oh, I'm going to be such a big writer. Life happens. And I'm very glad that I've come to that realization instead of being delusional that I would, oh, it's everyone else doesn't understand me. I am, what is the King Missile song? I'm a sensitive artist and no one understands me. It's just now I have to deal with the reality that, I send a piece in, someone's sitting at their desktop computer, they hear a ding, they open up my piece and go, oh no, and just reject it immediately, like that magazine I talked about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
Oh
you know
boy.
what it is, Tim? It's we're really kind of circling around confidence versus arrogance. And I think what we're talking
Yeah.
about, because I don't want people to think, oh, you have to be completely humble and you have to, think that your writing is not worthy and, throw it out into the wind and hope for the best. No, that's not what I'm saying at all. You have to be confident. There's a reason you're writing stuff down in the first place. There's a reason you're putting your name on it and then trying to show it to people. So like that matters. You think it's worth reading. So if you have
Yeah.
something that you don't think is worth reading, don't show it to the world. Show it to your writing team, your trusted allies who will help you make it better. But no, I mean when you get something to that level of doneness where you're like, yep, this is my view of the world, or this is an aspect of life that I want people to consider in this way, then shove it out the door and just make sure it has a parachute on, but shove it out the plane door and let it go. But that's
Let
different
it
from
fly.
that's different from arrogance though, right? And I think I had more
Yes.
arrogance as a younger man where I thought how
Yes.
lucky the world is to have my writing. It's like, all right, dial it
Yeah.
back, genius. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and
Um,
we can definitely find a place in between arrogance and, well, no, not even between. Let's be confident. Let's not be arrogant. Yes.
I think that's probably the better path because if I ever start getting arrogance, it wouldn't take very long. The publisher that I keep talking about today from that lit mag could just sort of like, dear Tiffin Writing Workshop. Oh no, not this guy. And I'm losing confidence. I swear. It's very difficult to keep, and I need to find like a level place that I can be at because I am like just going through a period I think in my just life existentially where uh, you know wow, I just got published by this lit mag. Maybe things are turning around and maybe I'm, going to have a broader audience. And again, with me, having a broader audience means that I am being validated by other people instead of by myself. So I'm still trying to find that balance as well, and sort of like, you know what, I like this piece. I like it for myself. I'm happy that I wrote it. I'm happy it exists. That's not a good enough for me. I need other people to be like, this is great with the thumbs up. I think I'm just in a phase right now because of extenuating circumstances in my life, i.e., work and the busy season at work. It's hard for me to take the bird's eye view of that and say, look, you do pretty good in the fall when things are slowed down. You do pretty good in the spring. There's a lot of generative ideas that come out at those times, and pieces come out of that. Maybe this is a time for you, Tim. I'm talking to myself strangely here. I don't know why. To maybe submit more of the work that you've done, to maybe retool some of the older pieces, to do little itty bitty bits of things here. Find a new lit mag that you can read that inspires you, or go back to the old lit mags that you really, really like, that sort of inspire you and show you different ways to do the story that you want to tell. I was just doing that this morning with a really great lit mag called Fictive Dream. And I have a piece that I've been working on for a couple of years. And I read a piece randomly today on Fictive Dream. If you go check it out, it's called Paper Airplanes by Zach Kiali Murphy. And it was just like, I know this is the basics. You're supposed to read a lot more than write because it teaches you. But I read this story. It was so beautiful. And I was like, wait a minute. What a beautiful way to tell this story. I want to experiment with this way to do this. To that piece, it just randomly brought this piece that I was writing back from the back recesses of my head and say, oh, I'd like to try that and get back into it and get excited about it. So yeah, it's really weird in the ways that you find the confidence. And I think right now with the arrogance is not there at all, but just trying to find what I can do in those times when I don't have a lot of confidence. And I think it's not writing more. It might be reading more or submitting more at that point.
You know how cyclical the publishing world is. They've got
Yeah.
seasons, and sometimes they fill up, and they might fill up within a certain period in the calendar. And I think professional writers who are really good at getting published are keenly aware of those cycles. And they probably have a really good understanding of the market where their work is going to be most competitive. And as a newer person entering this world, that's one of the reasons I haven't submitted very much, is because I feel like it in part, I don't have enough of a body of work to sit back and go, okay, I'm going to get my t-shirt cannon and I'm going to load a story in my t-shirt cannon, a thunk, 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 and I'm sending them out to all the right places. I just have stories that are almost over the finish line. I think I might have 3 or 4 that are almost over the finish line, and I just need to buckle down and get them finished. And then a
Yeah.
whole new part of my brain needs to become active in doing the research and figuring out, where are these lit mags? Let me do a little reading on some of them, because you really should read them before you submit to them, and just make sure that they're, going to be a good fit for what I do, and then start submitting. So I'm not there yet at all. I'm still really focused on how to do the work well. And I do feel like I'm at the goal line, which is good. And I can kind of get over the goal line. The arrogance, I think, is a function of youth. Like neither of us is arrogant about our writing by any stretch. But back in the day, we were. And I think it was because that's what you needed to fill the balloon. You didn't have a lot of experience, and you didn't have a lot of life that you could exhale into that balloon to blow it up. So you had to, you got to put something in there. So it's just like, oh, I am awesome, and so you blow that into the balloon. And now, the lack of success and the lack of work over the last however many years has allowed all that arrogance to leak out of the balloon. And so now I'm just really blowing the confidence into it to get it back to a nice spherical shape. And the confidence is coming from doing the work. It's coming from doing this podcast. It's coming from having these conversations with you and seeing the results of doing the work. That's what's so amazing, is that I'm not sort of pining to be a writer of any note. It's not like something that, that's not the finish line for me. And I think that may be a symptom of what you're experiencing, because if you are relying on publications to sort of continually validate to you that you're worthy, that you're capable, if your confidence is derived from other people, then you're going to be disappointed, and you're not going to have any control over it, because you're abdicating your control to other people and the whims and the schedules and, their preferences. So I would counsel you, like, I try not to give advice, especially to you, because we're peers, but like, please don't do that anymore. You're a very good writer, and you're continually improving. So just figure out how you can become very satisfied with getting your piece to that level of doneness where you're like, yep, that's what I want it to be. And then you start loading the t-shirt cannon and shooting it out into the world, and you see who wants to put the t-shirt on. We'll mix all of our metaphors today. Today's mixed metaphor is brought to you by booze. Booze doesn't care what metaphor you want. No, I haven't had
Try it
anything.
in a coffee mug.
That's right. Make
That's great.
everything Irish.
Yeah. Yeah, and I appreciate that, and I think that that's what's really happening, and I think that that's what's really nice is to when I start losing the confidence, I think that might be part of the ego in some weird way going away. That I do have to do the work, that I can't just sit down and whip something out, that it's so rare. I think, when I was younger, I always used to feel like everybody wanted to discover that they were the Luke Skywalker of something. So in other words, you're just a random cashier at a grocery store, but it turns out you have this amazing skill. You're a natural skateboarder, or you're a natural volleyball player, or maybe you're a natural, mason. You're a natural songwriter. You're the Luke Skywalker of songwriting. You're the Luke Skywalker of masonry. And I guess I always had figured at some point, since it was something that drew me in and I seemed to have a lot of early success, I was like, oh man, I'm the Luke Skywalker of writing. Maybe that's my big thing. But the older I get, the kind of more I realize that might not really be too true. People just do what they like to do, and they should be allowed to do what they like to do. And so,
Well, that's
you
another
know,
fallacy. I mean, that's the other part that I used to adopt, which was I want to be the best, and that's sort
yeah,
of pounded into you as an American youth in the '80s. You need to be the best, uh,
yeah,
and and that's not a realistic goal. There is no
yeah,
empirical best. I know we've talked about this before. There is no empirical best. Even if there were, everyone else, other than the one person at the top of the heap, would be dissatisfied and would be considered a failure. All right, so that's a dumb
yeah,
premise. We're going to set that aside. So, like, now
yeah,
I'm focused on be the best version of yourself that you can be because you can actually control that and you don't know what the limits are there. That's the beauty of it. So, like, I write this piece, this 2,200 word piece that came out of friggin' nowhere, and I like it. And I'm like, I'm a little uncomfortable that it's based on, a kernel of truth. And
yeah,
the character took a turn that I necessarily wouldn't. And I worry that people would read the story and go, ooh, I can't believe he thinks that. And I'm like, no, 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 not that part. Like I want to annotate it and go, this is fictional. This is not. And like, no, no,
yeah,
you can't do that
yeah,
either. So I'm just going to I'm going to let the foal stand on its own legs, and kind of stand there and wobble for a while until it gets its legs. And we'll hope that people like it. But I'm confident enough to do that now. Whereas before I had this sort of unearned self-importance that I think I needed in
yeah,
order to carry me forward because it's hard work. Writing is hard work. To take it
yeah,
seriously and to try to get good at it is thankless, lonely, isolationist
yes,
type of work. And so you've got to have a
yes,
certain level of arrogance to even attempt it. Like, who are
yeah,
you? Why do I need to write my thoughts down? Like, how important am I that my thoughts need to be written down for eternity? Like, come on, kid,
yeah,
really? But yeah,
yeah,
the
yeah,
that was the point of view I had, is that this is so important to the world that I need to write it
yeah,
down and then put my name on it and then stand back and wait for the accolades to pour in and how wonderful I am. And it's like, no, none of that matters anymore. Let me ask you this,
and
Tim.
it's okay.
What does success look like to you for real?
We talked about this really early on in this podcast, and I think it's changed slightly for me because back then it was sort of like I think success would be like I have a healthy living writing, or I have a nice following, people that I can interact with, famous. I want to be famous. I want to be rich. Who doesn't want to be rich and famous? I think that was kind of like an early thing that I deemed as success. But now I just want to be able to have confidence in my voice. I think is gaining ground. I still, believe you me, would I turn down someone that was like, we really like this and we want to pay you $3 million to write us a script? Oh yeah, I'd like that. That would be a nice success. But for me, I'm starting to gain a little traction in the idea that I would just like to be confident in my voice and consistent in my voice. And what that means to say is that I'm listening to myself more and knowing when something's finished, knowing when it's the way that I want to say it, and not what I have been doing for the past couple of years, which is finding myself trying to write for a specific lit mag. I just want to have Tim's voice.
Yeah, I look, that is a good thing to aspire to because in the many of your pieces, your voice rings out very clearly and it's delightful and I love it. So I think that's a good goal because you're not pinning your hopes on other people's decision making. You can control what you just expressed. And so if you put your head down and go to work, then you can accomplish that. I'm trying to
Yeah.
figure out if I mean, I don't even know what the hell I'm trying to figure out, Tim. I'll be honest. But I
And that,
used, yeah, I used to think,
but that's so but that's the thing. Like that's it too. Like if you don't know what you want, but you're exploring it through writing or exploring it through painting or exploring it through masonry. Can you tell that I'm having a chimney built at my house in central New York because I keep talking about masons? Um, if you're whatever success is to you, that's going to be different regardless of who you are. But if it's also going to be a giant mess, I'm never going to truly find my voice. I'm never going to be comfortable with that, and I don't ever want to be comfortable with that. I think it might have been Bono because he is the closest thing I have to a religion, which is Bono. I think he once talked about how he never wanted to feel like, oh, I've made it. I mean, let's talk about that last Las Vegas single. That was really horrible, and maybe they are giving up, and maybe they are just, doing whatever. But anyway, what I mean to say is like I never want to feel that I've made it because I don't want to feel like, okay, now I can relax. I think you should always be exploring and always looking for something new. But for me to say that success is this or success is that's whatever. Everybody has their own thing. But mostly you have to get comfortable with the fact that it's always going to be messy. There's always going to be a mess. And I think that sometimes that really frustrates me, and that's what kicks my confidence, is that I haven't been able to like clean the mess.
I mean, I'm fine with messy. I struggle with this. 25 plus years ago when I started doing this work, I think I did it because I wanted people to recognize my specialness. I wanted the accolades. I
Right.
wanted to be,
Yeah.
praised. And it seems really stupid looking back at it, but that's kind of why I did it. And I had a sensibility, like I had enough people read some of my early work and give me praise that maybe wasn't warranted. Maybe it wasn't right, but I had enough positive reinforcement early that I thought I had sort of skipped ahead. I had a cheat code to the end of the game, and I was where I needed to be. And I've heard you express this too, Tim, where you're like, yeah, whenever I buckle down, I'll just do the thing, whenever I decide
Yeah.
to, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's absurd. And I discovered that was absurd actually by watching, I think his name is Daniel Baldwin. He's Alec Baldwin's brother. He's kind of this big
Hmm.
meathead. And I saw him say essentially the same thing on camera. And this must have been like 10, 15 years ago. But he's like, yeah, I could have been a lawyer. I'd have been the best lawyer. If I just, wanted to do it, I would have done it. And I would have been the best. And I'm like, oh shit,
Yeah.
I have made a horrible mistake. Like I cannot believe, oh my God, did I sound like that guy? Probably, and that guy's
Right.
absurd. That
Yeah.
guy's a cartoon. So yeah, I mean, just
Exactly.
to kind of pull it back, I have a lot more confidence now than I did as a kid, and I'm thankful for that. And it took a lot of time off, and it took a lot of soul searching and humility. Like I needed to be taken down many pegs, and then decide, nope, I still have something to contribute. So let me try to contribute. And I don't know whether it's, a best-selling novel or a this or a that. It doesn't matter. I think my goal is really, I feel like I have untapped potential. I feel like I have something to contribute. I have no idea what that is, but I would like to try and put it forward. And if people find it valuable, great. And if they don't, well, then, maybe the next generation will. Who knows? Or maybe nobody will. But I need to do it for me because it's important to me. I feel like if I don't do it, then it's a wasted opportunity. It's a missed exit on the highway. So I got to try.
Yeah.